Good morning, everyone. Today, we'll take one last look, the fourth and the final look at the discussion for the Mains 2020 essay paper. And today's class, we'll be looking specifically at reflective essays. Now, before I start with that, what exactly are reflective essays? Since the year 2015, reflective or philosophical essays, some people call them philosophical, some call them reflective, these essays have become extremely common. In the worst of years, you will have at least one or two topics coming from this category. In the best of years, for example, if I remember correctly, I think this was 2015 or 2017, as many as 5 essay topics can come only from this section. In the 2020 essay paper, there were the entire section A, 4 essay topics were based only upon this. Now, when it comes to essays that are asked on economics or social issues or international relations or science and technology, students usually have some piece of information or the other that they've read in their optional, that they've read in the newspapers, that they read as part of their studies, which they can use to write the essay. For reflective essays, however, they usually do not possess this information. Many students struggle to understand what the topic of the essay is. Many students struggle to understand what exactly they should be writing in it. They write one point, they write it very well. Beyond that, they don't know how to extend their essay. However, and I'm saying this with complete honesty, reflective essays by themselves are extremely simple. Preparing for these essays is equally easy. What you need to do, I'll explain to you in the course of the class. During the class, do not remain fixated on the topic that we're discussing. More importantly, try to understand what elements we identify here, how we work upon those elements, and how we structure them to create the essay. A similar template, if you use at home, preparing for almost any reflective essay that may come will not take you more than about a week or 10 days of work. And after those 10 days of work are over, any essay topic that comes, you'll be fairly confident in writing a decent essay. Without delay, let me start with the discussion over here. And to start with the discussion, this is the paper as it had come this year. These 3 topics from section B, 2, 3 and 4, we've already looked at. Today's class, we'll take a look at the first section over here. These are the reflective essays that were asked this year. Now, I cannot discuss all 4 of them. So what I'll do is, we'll take a look at the first 3. The first one, we'll take a look at in detail. How you use a similar understanding for other essays, we'll do that by taking the example of the second and the third essay here. And before I get into that, and before we look at these topics specifically, first understand how are reflective essays different from traditional essays, from the usual essays, economics, media, healthcare, and so on. 5 basic features for a reflective essay you must keep in mind. These 5 points, if you understand and if you're able to pay attention to them while you're writing, your essay will improve in quality. Number 1, when it comes to reflective essays, these essays are not fact heavy. What does not fact heavy mean? That the use of data, the use of information, the use of facts in these kind of essays is relatively low. Most of the focus of reflective essays is on discussion, is on opinion. To an extent, it is even upon providing a certain degree of learning or a certain degree of teaching. Second, these are essays, since they are reflective, since they are philosophical, it is but natural that these essays are value-based. What does value-based mean? Now, this is one common element for all reflective essays, that a very simple way of looking at them is to identify the values that are involved. How you identify values, what values you can use, we'll come to in a little while. But every reflective essay will have a very strong value-based orientation. Number 3, since we are talking about values, you must keep in mind that here, if you want to add more quality to your essay, if you want to add emphasis in your essay, simple and appropriate examples are very important. It is because we are talking about examples. See, you're writing an essay on economics, you give a little bit of data that was published by, let's say, the NSSO. You give a little bit of data that was quoted by the economic survey, and that's fine. In an example, especially for reflective essays, you will have to, this example, you will have to explain, you will have to elaborate a little, not in depth, but a little. Which is why these essays usually, every paragraph here will become a little longer, will require slightly better writing abilities, but will also make it easier, because where otherwise you needed at least 5 or 6 distinct dimensions, here even 4 or 5 will be enough. Fourth, since we are talking about values, since we are talking about essays that are philosophical, that are reflective, these are the kind of essay topics which will reward you, which will give you more marks for being optimistic or for being virtuous in your writing. The more optimism you display, the more hope you display, the more positive you are, the more optimistic you are, the better invariably will be your marks. And needless to say, the economics topics will fetch you a lot of marks. The economics topics will fetch you a lot of marks if you can use information from economics, media, social issues, and so on and so forth. Similarly, in the reflective essays, knowledge from the ethics paper is beneficial. Whether it is in the ethics paper is divided into 3 parts: public administration, philosophy, and psychology. The more of those topics you can incorporate here, the more examples from there that you can use over here, the better will be the quality of your essay. For reflective essays, they're extremely common these days, 4 or 5 essays being asked in a year. For reflective essays, these 5 points keep in mind whenever you approach them. Now, keeping this in mind, when it comes to essay writing, as we've already done, 3 basic rules. Number 1, understand the topic correctly. Number 2, provide a consistent perspective on the topic. Number 3, ensure that your essay is interesting to read, is easy to understand. And to understand how you do that in detail now, understand the topic correctly, the same elements that we looked at. First, identify the key terms. Second, for reflective essays now, this is the difference that comes. Just one point that is different. In every essay, also identify the values that are relevant to the topic. Every single reflective essay will have some underlying values. Identify what those are. And again, like I said, because you'll have to elaborate upon the values, because you'll have to sketch out your examples, even 4 to 5 values, even if you choose only 4 of them, as long as they are relevant, it will be more than enough. Third, understand the meanings of these terms, understand the meanings of these values, identify the correlation and the connection between them. Fourth, rephrase the essay topic as a question. This will help you establish your perspective on the topic. First, understand the topic as correctly as you can. Second, after that, provide a consistent perspective on the topic. How do you provide a consistent perspective on the topic? First, identify your perspective on the topic, whether you agree with it, whether you disagree with it, to what extent you agree, where you would want to contradict, and so on. And second, create a skeletal structure of your essay. Third, this is what we've already covered many times, make the essay interesting to read by using anecdotes, examples, quotations, and so on. Second, make it easy to understand by having a logical flow, by having a clear structure, by adopting a generalist orientation, and so on. 3 basic rules that we've discussed many times. Now, keeping these in mind, these 3 essay topics from this year's paper we look at today. First, life is a long journey between human being and being humane. Second, mindful manifesto is the catalyst to a tranquil self. And third, ships do not sink because of water around them. They sink because of the water that gets into them. 3 essay topics we'll be looking at. And when you're looking at these 3 topics, for reflective essays, the first thing that you do is identify what are the underlying values, what are the underlying principles, or even if you want to further simplify it, there's no need to get into jargon. You can even say what are the underlying ethical concepts that are of relevance here. For example, if I say, now please pay attention a little more carefully, this again is brainstorming that you're doing. When we say that life is a long journey between a human being and being humane, what does human and humane mean? Every single one of us is human. Everyone was born a human being, but everyone is not necessarily humane. What does humane mean? Humane means, very directly and very simply, a person who has compassion, a person who is caring, a person who has genuine concern for the welfare and the well-being of others. Every person is a human being, but every person necessarily is not humane. So in this topic, what are the values that may be relevant? Self-awareness, introspection, reflection, compassion, altruism, self-actualization, empathy, emotional intelligence, sacrifice, contentment, so on and so forth. The list you can see over here. Similarly, and let me just explain these two briefly along with this. If I look at the essay topic, which says that a mindful manifesto is the catalyst to a tranquil self, what are the values involved? Self-awareness. And what does this mean? It means that at any point in time, what is mindfulness? Awareness, cognizance, and a keen understanding of your environment and of the events that are occurring around you, whether on an individual level, whether on a societal level, whether on a collective level, and so on. What are the values that are, and that is absolutely essential. Mindful manifesto means that at any point in time, you must be aware not only of yourself, but also of the events and the incidents, the occurrences happening around you. Only then will you have tranquility, will you be able to attain true peace. What are the values that are involved here? Again, self-awareness, introspection, wisdom, self-actualization, perseverance, emotional intelligence, and so on. Another essay topic that is given, ships do not sink because of the water around them, they sink because of the water that gets into them. Here, what does this mean? When we say that ships do not sink because of the water around them, but because of the water that gets in plain simple words, this means that every single person is facing some problem, is facing some challenge, and so on. There's not a single person who does not have some adversity to deal with. But ships do not sink, or people do not suffer only because of problems around them. What matters is the extent to which you allow the water to get into the ship. What matters is the extent to which you allow these problems to impact you. To what extent your problems or your adversities impact you, how you respond to them, how you deal with them, that will determine whether you survive or whether you sink. And in this topic, what are the values that are involved? Values such as, again, self-awareness, introspection, reflection, determination, courage, perseverance, emotional intelligence, contentment, and so on and so forth. Now here, I don't know how many these are, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I put 10 values under each of these topics. But when I'm writing the actual exam, I cannot write so many because I don't have the time for it, I don't have the words. So out of these 10, whichever 4 or 5 you believe are the most relevant, and where you believe that you have an adequate quantity of content, choose 4 or 5 of those values. How you use the values and how you structure your essay, I'll explain to you in a few minutes. First, for reflective essays, identify 4 or 5 values which you believe are relevant for the topic. Number 2, why in the earlier part of this lecture, I said that preparing for reflective essays is very easy. All that you need is about 10 to 12 days of focused work to prepare your content, after which you'll be prepared for almost any essay that may be asked. Why do we say that? Now, if you make this simple observation here, many of these values, but naturally, are common. For example, if I take a look at self-awareness, that is one value which is common to all 3 essay topics. If you take a look at self-actualization, it is common. All of them will not be common, but many of them will be. It is common to all 3. If you take a look at perseverance, perseverance may not necessarily apply or very directly apply to the first topic, but it applies very directly to the next 2. Perseverance, if you want a mindful manifesto, you will have to persevere to understand yourself and your environment on a regular, consistent basis. Similarly, if you want to overcome your problems and not let them get the better of you, you will have to indicate, you will have to display perseverance even there. Emotional intelligence, common to all 3. Contentment, common to all 3, and so on. First, for reflective essays, identify 4 or 5 values that you believe are relevant to the topic. Number 2, when you're preparing at home, when you're preparing for the essay paper, for any value, prepare it well. How you prepare, I'll explain to you in some time. Prepare it well, because no matter how the topic changes, there will be some values that will apply equally to all of them, that will be relevant to all the topics. Now, having said this, let me more directly also take you and start with one topic first. Life is a long journey between a human being and being humane. Now, in any essay topic, what is the first thing that we do? First thing that we do is you identify the key terms. Three terms over here: human, humane, and long journey. What does this mean? What I was just saying a few minutes back. Every single person is human. Every single person is born a human being, but that is not an achievement by itself. The true achievement is if you can be humane, if you can be compassionate, if you can be concerned, if you can have empathy towards the pain, towards the suffering of others, and if possible, try to reduce those problems, reduce that suffering. And the journey from being merely a human being to becoming truly humane is a long journey. It will take time, it will need self-reflection, it will need constant efforts at improvement. Second, identify the key values. Now, there were 10 values given over there to us, out of which, let's say, we choose only 5. Self-awareness, compassion, empathy, forgiveness, and emotional intelligence. I have chosen these 5. If you believe that you want to choose, you have content for some other values, you're free to use those also. Third, identify the correlation between these terms and rephrase the topic as a question to enable you to do that. For example, here, how do I rephrase the topic? What is the difference between a human being and being humane? And they answer very evidently that we need to become humane, we need conscious efforts towards being compassionate, towards being empathetic. Not mechanical in our everyday thinking, everyday functioning. It is not enough to wake up and do your everyday chores, your everyday duties in the same repetitive manner. You must consciously apply your mind to understand how exactly you can inculcate more compassion, more empathy, more feelings, concern for others around you. And third, create a skeletal structure. 3 simple steps here. First, explain the difference in your essay, the difference between humans and humane. Second, explain why being humane is important. And number 3, explain how being humane enriches almost every aspect of human life. This is your broad template on the basis of which you will work. Now, as we've said earlier also, 3 parts to your essay: introduction, 150 to 200 words, body paragraphs, in this case 5 at the most. If you want to keep it to 4, even that would be fine. And third, the conclusion, 100 to 120 words. This we've discussed many times earlier. Now, life, in fact, let me briefly show you the topic and then I'll start with this. Life is a long journey between human being and being humane. When you are writing your essay, at that point in time, ensure that the correlation that you've developed between these 2 terms, you focus on that and you're able to illustrate that in your essay. The distinction between a person who's only human and a person, more importantly, who can evolve into being truly humane. For that now, how do you frame your introduction? In your introduction, now here examples are very relevant for reflective essays. So any example you can choose where you can show how a person evolved from being merely human to also becoming truly humane. A very relevant example over here, for instance, is the example of Valmiki. Now, Valmiki is one of the greatest sages and one of the greatest authors or poets that we've ever known. But before he became a sage, there are many stories that revolve around him. One story says that before he became a sage and a poet, he was a robber. He was approached by, some people say there's one sage called Narad, some say a group of sages. They told him that this life of robbing, this life of evil was not going to yield much. Valmiki sat back and what did he do? He started reflecting, self-awareness, introspection, reflection. He started reflecting upon his deeds and he realized that what he was doing was not right. When he realized that, he turned towards the path of penance and he started focusing on elements that were more virtuous, that were more noble. Valmiki, it is said, sat down. In fact, because the story is quite fascinating, let me briefly add that also. Valmiki apparently was told by either Narad or these sages that he should sit back and meditate. He said, I do not know how to meditate. So they told him that you sit here and you utter just one word, which is Ram. Valmiki was not comfortable with the word Ram. He did not know who Ram was. So he said that the one thing that I know is Mar, which in Hindi, which is the Hindi word rather, for killing or to beat someone. He started repeating the word over and over and over again, and over a period of time, this Mar transformed into Ram. Years went by, Valmiki sat in the same place and kept going on with his meditation, with his penance. Many years later, when the sages returned to that place, they realized that where Valmiki had been sitting, there was an anthill over there. And the anthill was in the shape of a man. So they realized that Valmiki must be inside it. They broke the anthill, and sure enough, he was sitting inside. How did he survive? How did he stay alive for all these years? See, he stayed alive because ants in the area who were in that anthill, those ants would carry drops of dew and would carry small leaves of tulsi and feed those to him. And the sages said that since you've been given a new life because of these ants, from today you shall be known as Valmiki. Valmik is the Sanskrit word for ants, and this is a person who's been given life by those ants. From here started the second aspect of his life, where he again reflected upon his deeds, turned towards a path of penance, and now composed what in Hindi is called the Adi Kavya, the first poem ever, which is called the Ramayana. And even today, the Ramayana is considered the ideal moral story. So, and what does this indicate? That life is a long journey between human being and being humane. When he was a robber, he was merely human. When he reflected upon what he had done, when he turned towards that path of virtue, that is when he became truly humane. If you know this example, good. You do not know the example, another one, very famous example, Emperor Ashoka. Ashoka is known for not only the expansion of his empire, he is also known for his absolutely bloodthirsty lust for power and domination. I think his name is synonymous with the name of the kingdom Kalinga. He decimated Kalinga so badly that they literally say that there were rivers of blood flowing all through. When he saw, he had the victory, or he earned the victory, but he realized it was a Pyrrhic victory, a victory which almost seems like a defeat. That is when Ashoka again looked within himself, started reflecting upon what he had done, and renounced the path of violence. Today, if we remember Ashoka, it is not only for the size of his empire, it is more importantly for his many charitable activities and for propagating Buddhism. I think it would not be wrong to say that without Ashoka's patronage, Buddhism would have not grown to the extent and at the pace with which it grew. And what does that indicate? Again, when he was lusting for power, when he was keen only on domination and violence, he was merely human. It is when he started going on the path of virtue, when he started following and propagating Buddhism, that he turned truly humane. You know this example? Very good. Don't know the example? Another one, the US. The US is called the land of the free. The US is called the home of the brave. The US is called the land of opportunity. And genuinely, it's not that they are stingy or they are miserly. The Americans in the year 2017 have provided more than $12.2 billion, not million, $1 billion in funding to international organizations. If you go to the US, as long as you're hardworking, you will always get the opportunities that you desire. And success is relatively easier to get. At the same time, despite doing so much for so many nations, so many organizations, the Americans even today are criticized for the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They're still criticized for the human rights violations and excesses that were committed at Guantanamo Bay, that were committed at Abu Ghraib, and so on. Why? Because no matter how much money you give, when you do something which you know to be fundamentally, morally and ethically wrong, you are still merely human. That aspect of being humane has still not entered into you. Which is why we say that life is a long journey between being human and, more importantly, evolving into being humane. In your introduction, especially for reflective essays, use a good appropriate anecdote, use a good appropriate example. One small point over here, when you're using these anecdotes and examples, number one, please try to avoid personal examples, and number two, please try to avoid absolutely hypothetical examples. What are hypothetical examples? Students create their own stories. A person who's going to so-and-so place, this person saw someone who was suffering, so the person helped him, which is why he became humane. Your story is absolutely right. But in the beginning of an essay, it does not create a very positive impact, does not create a very good impact, indicates a lack of preparation. So use examples that are common, that are famous. After using the example at the end, as we've said repeatedly, merely repeat the topic. Repeat that, it will create a very strong impact and help the examiner know that you understand the topic correctly. First, your introduction and similar content for your conclusion also. After you've written your introduction, in the first body paragraph, explain the key concern of the topic, explain how the different terms, different values are correlated. For example, here what do you say? You say that we become we become humans by virtue of our birth. It is no achievement. All that you have to do is to be born into this particular species. But we become humane by virtue of our conscious thoughts, deliberate thoughts and actions. Being human is not enough. Why is it not enough? Because, why is it not enough? Because it only entails that you live by the established norms. Whatever are the norms, the conventions, the traditions that are currently continuing, you live according to them without questioning the validity, the need or the impact, a good impact or a harmful impact of any such norms, any such conventions. Merely following these existing norms may cause harm to ourselves or to others, or at least will inhibit us from doing something better, will prevent us from fulfilling our true potential. Which is why we say that it is being humane that allows us to rectify our errors and our lapses and distribute benefits to everyone, work for the common welfare of all. And of course, if you wanted to use a quotation, where does this essay topic come from? A statement given by Gandhi that the greatness of humanity is not in being human but in being humane. So, first paragraph, an anecdote and repeat the topic. First body paragraph, explain how the terms are correlated, establish the key concern, the key fundamental takeaway of the essay. After doing this, 4 to 5 more body paragraphs. For all other essays, I say that you should have at least 5 body paragraphs providing different dimensions, different perspectives. But in reflective essays again, you will have to elaborate more on the examples to make them relatable. Which is why even if you write 4 good quality paragraphs, your essay will be adequate in length as well as in quality. And every body paragraph, as we've always said, must present a different perspective, a different dimension. In this case, one word that we add of different value. All of them must deal with a different value. Second, present a coherent argument with regard to the concerns and possible solutions. Third, substantiate the argument with appropriate examples. Now, for the topic we were looking at, that life is a long journey between human being and being humane. Here, what values do we use? First and most importantly, self-awareness. I'll start with this in a moment. For every value, what do? The same thing that we've seen in the past. First, identify some concerns. Second, give some recommendations, some solutions if possible. And third, give appropriate evidence in the form of examples. What does this mean? For reflective essays, this means that when you are talking about any value, understand that if values were present in everyone, in the right amount, in the right manner, we would not have many problems. Most of our problems immediately would diminish. But values are easy to talk about in theory, they're not equally easy to find or to practice in real life. Which is why, first identify what are the problems, what are the challenges regarding this value. Second, identify what recommendation we can give to promote these values. And third, give us again some evidence, some examples to substantiate your point. For example, first and the most important value, if you want to transform from being only a human being to also becoming humane, the most important value is self-awareness. What is self-awareness? Add a brief description. Understanding how our values, how our passions, how our aspirations fit into our environment, how they fit into our reactions, and how they have an impact on others around us. They say that, if you know others, that is intelligence. If you know yourself, that is true wisdom. Many of us are very judgmental, are very quick to pass a judgment on others. That someone is good, someone is bad, someone is courageous, someone is cowardly. Very few of us know ourselves. So self-awareness is the first element to progress from being a human being to becoming humane. What are the problems with self-awareness? In specifically the Indian context, 3 issues that we face. Number 1 is our social conditioning. A tendency, the manner in which we are raised, the manner in which we socialize with people around us, invariably there is very little emphasis or very little space given for personal reflection, for understanding ourselves, and which is why we have a tendency usually to act in a very mechanical, in a very mechanistic manner. This problem, where invariably we are not given, and these concepts you read about in the ethics paper also. Second, these problems are further compounded by our education system. We call it the education system, but our system invariably focuses only on rote memorization. It focuses on the learning of information, but does not often equip us with the skills needed to use this information. As a result of which, we are not encouraged to think independently. Where we are not encouraged to think independently, the third problem, why do we not have self-awareness? A herd mentality. The inability or the unwillingness, what is herd mentality? Blindly following the crowd. The inability or the unwillingness to think for ourselves and merely follow the crowd. Where most of our notions of right or wrong, good or bad, are not determined by what we believe to be right or wrong, but are dictated by others around us. Where we have these three concerns, now I know that a lot of people lack self-awareness because of, let's say, these three concerns. How do you overcome them? Here now, give some recommendations. What recommendations? Since our socialization needs improvement, better child rearing practices. And for these better child rearing practices, three people become very important: the mother, the father, and the teacher. This is what APJ Abdul Kalam had also said, that these three people have a vital role to play in transforming and improving the standards of our quality, of our society. Second, better socialization and holistic education. Examples I'll just give you in a moment. And third, good role models to encourage people to aspire to higher ideals. The kind of role models that we have, especially in our country, invariably tell us what we, or teach us what we should not be doing. What examples can you give here? For example, when we are talking about holistic education, here give the example of the Japanese education system. In Japan, what is the Japanese education system based upon? It is based upon inculcating the right values within children at an early age. Very simple example here. In Japan, students clean the school premises themselves. This teaches them to respect their surroundings and their environment. School gets over at, let's say, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The children will sit down and have their food. After that, under the guidance of their teacher, these very students will clean up their entire room. They will clean up the premises of the school. What does this teach them? That it's very easy to litter in a place. It's very difficult to pick it up and to clean it. Over a period of time, these students evolve into citizens who care about the betterment and the happiness of their fellow human beings also. To contrast this with India, in India, whenever we go to a public place, what is a public place? It may be a restaurant, it may be a cinema hall, it may be a railway station, maybe inside a train. We expect to find the bathroom clean. If we don't find it clean, we are often very critical of the place. But when we leave the bathroom, we are not equally concerned with whether we've left it clean for the next person who will use it. Why? Because that is the kind of conditioning and that is the kind of social environment we've often seen around us. So provide better socialization and a holistic education. Number two, in India, we're talking about being humane. In India, there is a problem of a lack of charity. 68% of social sector funding in India, 68% of social sector funding in India comes from the government. Individual funding or individual contributions, charity contributions, are only 0.4% of the GDP. In contrast, you take a look at the US, there the same figure is 1.4% of the GDP. And it's not that we don't have money. It's not that we don't give. We give, but we give only to those, to those agencies which our society or which our socialization has taught us are worthy. For example, there was an NSSO study, National Sample Survey Organization. They conducted a study in which the NSSO said that 9% of monthly per capita expenditure is on religious services. We are willing, whether we go to a temple or a gurudwara or a church or a mosque, we are willing to contribute generously there. But for services that should be considered very important, very vital, for example, sewage disposal, for example, sanitation, here we literally do not contribute. Why? Because again, we have a lack of charity. And when we talk about good role models, this again has gone missing from here. this again has gone missing from here, but when it comes to being humane and doing more for others, I think one person that every Indian must know of is this person called Azim Premji. Azim Premji is a person, he and his family, those facts have gone missing, so let me add them here. They control 74% of the stake in Wipro. Out of this 74%, every year, 67% of the earnings, whether it is the dividends, whether it is revenue earnings, 67% of the earnings are contributed to some charity or the other, invariably the Azim Premji Foundation. And the family itself keeps only 7% of the earnings for themselves. To understand what this one person single-handedly has been able to achieve, note that in the year 2020, just last year, his single-handed donation for various causes was 7,904 crores. 7,000. Process that figure in your mind for a moment. 7,900 crores is what he contributed for others. His own money, which he will never see again, which he'll never get back. What is that called? That is called truly being humane, being compassionate. And the Azim Premji Foundation today has a total endowment of a little over 21 billion, not million, $21 billion. Truly, the difference between being human and being humane. And why does he do this? Because Azim Premji says, self-awareness again, Azim Premji says that I have more than enough to meet my needs. I live a very comfortable, to an extent even a luxurious life, and more than that, I honestly don't believe that I would want. First, identify a value. In your paragraph, briefly, right in the beginning, very briefly explain what that value means. Identify some concerns, give some recommendations, and substantiate your writing by giving appropriate evidence. Another value we can use in this regard is a value called compassion. If you wanted to use another word, you could use the word altruism. Please give me a moment. Another word you could use is altruism. What is compassion? Compassion means, and again, you're not only a human being, you should also try to become more humane. Compassion means that you must have genuine concern and you must be sensitive towards the suffering, the problems, the misfortunes of others. You don't want to use the word compassion, use another word, altruism, selfless concern for the well-being of others. More or less the same, either word you can use. Now, you start your paragraph, briefly explain what this value is, then you explain what are the concerns. Why do people lack compassion? Many reasons for this. One, and the first and a very prominent reason is what we call the bystander effect. What is the bystander effect? The bystander effect says that individuals are less likely to offer help to a victim when there are other people present. In ethics, we do the same thing. To imagine it in simple terms, you think that there's an accident that has happened on the road. Someone is very badly injured. If you're walking alone from there and there's nobody else, there's a greater probability that you will stop to help that person. But if that same accident happened in the middle of the day and there's a lot of traffic, lot of people on the road and nobody is stopping, there's a probability that you will also not stop to help that person. Why? Because your sense of responsibility now gets significantly reduced. If others are not doing it, if others are not doing the right thing, why should I? That is the bystander effect. And how does that relate to compassion? That if there's so much suffering in the country, if there are such great inequalities in the country and nobody else is doing something about it, why should I? Second reason for a lack of compassion, or at least declining compassion, is rising materialism. What is rising materialism? That it has come to a point where we love inanimate objects, non-living things, material objects more than our concern and our love for living things. And living things is humans as well as even animals. And where this happens, invariably it breeds negative emotions and an indifference towards others. Third reason for a lack or a decline in compassion is individualism and a tendency to value one's own well-being over that of others. I will first satisfy myself only, or satisfy my needs, and only then will I bother about others. Where you have these concerns, what recommendations can you give? Where you have these concerns, what recommendations can you give? Number one, promote the realization and the appreciation of interdependence. What does this mean? that you must understand that all of us are dependent on each other. If I do not help you when I am in a capacity to do so, tomorrow you may not be willing to do the same for me. At the end of the day, no matter what our differences, all of us have a common existence and ideally a common objective towards life. Second, inculcate gratitude and sensitivity. What does this mean? Many of us are so busy in our everyday lives. Let me take the example of a student preparing for the civil services. 23, 24-year-old, young person, intelligent person, healthy person, and by God's grace, everything is well in his or her life. Now, such a person will remain focused on their work, on their well-being, on their examination, interview preparation, and so on, but will rarely ever pause to consider that there are many people who, in their own little way, he or she can definitely help. So, inculcate gratitude and sensitivity, gratitude for the blessings for what you've got, and sensitivity towards the suffering of others and possibly the ability to help those people out. How do you do that? For example, by visiting an orphanage. For example, by visiting a hospital and realizing that there are so many people who could benefit greatly from a little bit of compassion on your end. And what evidence can you give over here? Many examples that come directly from India itself. First, and we are talking about compassion here, so the first and the most appropriate example, Mother Teresa. Winner of the Nobel Prize, known the world over, Saint Teresa now. She founded the Missionaries of Charity in 1950. Today, the Missionaries of Charity have 758 missions in, that's not 9 countries, that's 139 countries. This, I think, something went missing over here. In about 139 countries. They provide help to the abject, poor, to the destitute, free of charge, regardless of their background. Whether you're male or female, whether you're Hindu or you're Muslim, regardless of who you are, they will provide you free shelter, free care for you. Again, what are they doing? Compassion and being humane. Similarly, the example of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. We were talking about socialization a little while back. Here, let me just take a small pause. When you're looking at reflective essays, please understand we are talking about values. Since we are talking about these values with reference to one particular topic, many of these values will overlap. Since the values overlap, it's not that if I'm talking about self-awareness, it will have no correlation with compassion. It's not that if I'm talking about compassion, it will have no correlation with forgiveness. They will overlap. Number two, since these values overlap, it is also, since these values overlap, it is but natural that some of your content and certainly many of your examples can also be used interchangeably, will also overlap. What does this mean? This means, for example, that earlier we were talking about socialization, the kind of socialization that we have. Now, for that, and we said that very often we adhere to existing norms, existing traditions without questioning their validity, their utility, or their good or bad impact. Here, we are talking about compassion now. A very good example here is that of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Raja Ram Mohan Roy is one of the foremost crusaders against the practice of sati, and sati at that point in time was considered absolutely normal. If a woman lost her husband, it was considered very normally, very naturally that she must end her life along with him, regardless of her age, regardless of what she wanted. Raja Ram Mohan Roy, there must have been many reasons as to why he fought this practice, but one very primary motivation was the experience of seeing his own sister-in-law being forced to commit sati. What is he displaying? He is displaying compassion, concern towards the suffering, towards the misfortunes of others, and in doing so, what is he becoming? More humane. Unfortunately, this compassion, where we would expect to see it very frequently, we often don't. In 2016, there was this case that became very famous where two medical students flung their names I will not use over here. And medical students flung a dog from their terrace. The dog fortunately survived with very bad injuries, but fortunately survived. These two students were arrested and they were fined. Ironically, both of them are practicing doctors now. I wonder why and how they were allowed to get that license and how they're allowed to practice medicine. When these students, and again this is an example of a lack of compassion, when these students were asked why they threw the dog from the terrace, why they threw him down, They said because this is not a human being, it's only an animal. The distinction between a human and an animal should not be considered on the basis of whether they have the capacity to speak, the capacity to think, the capacity to act in a certain manner. It should be based upon the aspect, do they have the capacity to suffer? And if you knew that the dog was going to suffer when you threw him down, why did you do it? A sheer lack of compassion. In contrast, and perhaps that is why some people are great and some are not, in contrast is the example of a person called APJ Abdul Kalam, one of, I think I'm right in saying, one of India's most loved presidents. APJ Abdul Kalam was once supervising the construction of a DRDO building. He asked the people there, what steps are you taking to ensure the security of the premises? So they told him that, sir, we are building a boundary wall, and on top of that boundary wall, we're going to put some broken glass. You know, you'll see it very commonly in India. They put small pieces of glass so that nobody can climb over. When he was told this, APJ Abdul Kalam immediately told the people, do not do this. Because if you do this, birds who try to perch on top of the wall might get hurt. And these two examples, please consider the sheer contrast between them. What is Kalam's example? This is called compassion, concern for the well-being, for the welfare of others. And one final example, if you wanted to give, Mr. Modi, the Prime Minister, is criticized and is loved in equal measure. Whether he is right, whether he is wrong, that is secondary. One aspect of his life that certainly is worth admiration, worth respect, is the fact that ever since he was the Chief Minister and when he was Prime Minister also, the gifts that are given to them, he rarely keeps any of them. Most of them he catalogues, he collects, he gets them catalogued, he gets them auctioned off. And the proceeds from these auctions, he gives to various charities. What is that called? Again, altruism or compassion. And if you want in such a paragraph, use a small quotation, for example here, that compassion is the basis of all morality. If you wanted to use a similar quotation earlier, when we are talking about self-awareness, here I think that went down. Here you could have said that an unexamined life is not worth living. So again, first identify a value, briefly explain it. Second, establish 2, maybe 3 concerns regarding that. Give some recommendations and give some evidence. One value, self-awareness. Second value, compassion. Third value, very similar to this one, is empathy. What is empathy? There's a person who's fallen into a hole. You look at him from the ground, you talk to him, and you feel bad for the fact that he's inside the hole. This is called sympathy. What is empathy? Empathy is identifying with the person, relating with the person. You don't just look at him and talk to him. You actually climb down into the hole, understand what he's going through, the fear, the anxiety, the worry that he's going through. That now is what you call empathy. So briefly mention the meaning also, the ability to understand another person's thoughts and feelings in a situation from their point of view rather than your own. We are very judgmental. We pass criticism very easily. We make comments about others very easily without understanding what the other person may be going through, which is why at the end over here, there's a small quotation that I've given, be kind, because everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. Now, why do we not have the kind of empathy? Why is empathy declining in modern day living? First, the adverse impact of technology. As the use of technology is increasing, our social contact is declining. We are living more solitary lifestyles. Earlier, if I wanted to research into, let's say, preparing for this class, I would have to go to a library. Today, I can do it sitting in the comfort of my own house on my laptop itself. Earlier, if I wanted to purchase some stationery, I would have to go to the market. Now, 2 clicks on my mouse and the same thing will be delivered to me within minutes. Social contact is declining, which is why, and we're living more solitary lifestyles, which is why it is becoming difficult to relate with others and their feelings. Second reason, and of course, if I cannot relate with others, that empathy will start declining also. Second, rising mental health problems. There is more depression, there is more anxiety, because of which invariably the focus comes on self-care first. If I myself am troubled, if I myself am not comfortable, I will not be in a position to do anything or do much for others. And third, the fear of burnout. What is fear of burnout? To an extent, the genuine fear that if I try to help someone else out, it will take a huge toll on me. It will affect my peace, it will affect my well being, it will affect my welfare. Where we have these concerns, what recommendation do you give? Number one, and now let me take the examples along with this. Number one, use technology in a manner where you do not alienate yourself from others, but that same technology enables you to understand the lives, the responsibilities, the problems, the issues that other people are facing. For example, how do you use technology in this manner? In India, we saw this just last year. The Prime Minister's, the PM Cares Fund was set up, and in a period of just 5 days, 3,000 crore rupees had been collected. When the lockdown was going on, people were confined to their homes, but it was technology that enabled them to see the suffering that others were going, enabled them to channelize their feelings, and channelize in this case even their monetary funds to ensure the help of others. What is this called? This is called using technology well to ensure that you empathize with others, making you more humane in the process. Number two, even if there are people who are facing problems, who are facing mental health issues, in this case, we would recommend that you recognize symptoms of personal suffering, your suffering, in others and help provide a remedy. What does this mean? Even if you believe that you've gone through a very difficult time, students, for example, who are not able to clear the examination, sometimes start getting very negative thoughts, and they behave in a particular manner. A talkative person becomes very quiet. A quiet person becomes very talkative. Some people start overeating. Some indulge in substance abuse and so on. If you've seen a difficult or if you've experienced a difficult phase, recognizing those symptoms in others becomes easier. So recognize those symptoms of personal suffering and help arrive at a solution, help arrive at a remedy. And third, detach attachment. Where does this apply? We are just saying that many people are not comfortable with empathizing because they believe that they will burn out themselves. The emotional, the psychological burden will be so much that they will not be able to take it. In this case, what do you recommend? Please again move towards humanity, being more humane by using a term called detach attachment. What is detach attachment? That you understand the pain, the problems, the suffering of others, but you understand it in a manner and to the extent that you yourself are not overwhelmed by their pain. And a simple example to give you over here is that of doctors. We say that doctors are a form of God. They can literally save a person from the mouth of death. But doctors also have to, exercise caution in ensuring that they do not get too closely attached with their patients. Otherwise, they risk that burnout themselves. And where you want this empathy or examples of empathy, again, many examples to give. For instance, first is the example, very famous example of a person called Oskar Schindler. Read a little about him. He was not only a German industrialist, he was also a member of the Nazi party. Oskar Schindler is a person, very rich industrialist, very successful. He spent all his money, his entire fortune, to save 1,200 Jews in Germany from certain death in Nazi concentration camps. What is that called? Empathizing with the pain, with the suffering of others. Second, the example of APJ Abdul Kalam. Again, very famous. APJ Abdul Kalam was working on a very important project. One of his juniors said that he needed to go home early that day at about 5 o'clock because he had to take his children to an exhibition. APJ Abdul Kalam agreed. But he told this person that at least till that time, you focus on your work. The junior went back, started working. After some time, the junior looked at his watch. He got very engrossed in his work. And when he looked at his watch, he realized it was past 7:30 or 8 o'clock. The time for the exhibition had gone. He was disappointed. He went back home. But when he went home, his children were not there. So he asked his wife, where are the children? The wife told him that at 5 o'clock, your boss came over and he has taken the children to the exhibition. The boss, of course, was Kalam. What does this indicate? For APJ Abdul Kalam, with the kind of national projects that he was heading, it should not really matter whether one's subordinate children go to an exhibition or not. You're working for very important national projects, so this really should not be a concern. And yet he did this. Why? Because he empathized, looked at the situation from another person's point of view. That is, Junior may have wanted to balance his professional and his personal life, but at the moment was unable to do this. This is called being humane. And another example, finally, is the case of Good Samaritans. Good Samaritan, who's a Good Samaritan? If there's an accident on the road, you stop to help that person out, take him to a hospital, give him medical aid or get him medical aid, we would call you a Good Samaritan. In 2016, the Supreme Court has issued guidelines to provide protection to Good Samaritans so that they are not unnecessarily harassed by the police or hospital authorities. And again, what is the intention? To inculcate more empathy within people and genuinely enable them to become more humane. Value, concern, recommendation and evidence. Another value, if you wanted to add, how does one become humane? Another value that you can add over here is a value called forgiveness. What is forgiveness? Forgiveness is the voluntary or the intentional process of letting go of any negative feeling. A feeling of hatred, a feeling of anger, a feeling of retaliation, feeling of resentment against someone who we believe has done some wrong to us, has deliberately wronged us. Forgiveness is important. In fact, this is one view by Gandhi. Let me touch upon that first. That will help you understand better. Why is forgiveness important? Mahatma Gandhi says forgiveness is important because if you seek retribution, if you seek revenge, it will destroy both people. The person who believes that there's a wrong committed to him, as well as the person who committed that wrong. Revenge will eat both of you up. On the other hand, forgiveness will elevate both. Forgiveness will free both. If you forgive someone, genuinely forgive someone, the other person is in peace, knowing that you don't wish him any harm. And you are at peace knowing that you've taken the moral high ground, that you've been able to rise beyond or above small petty considerations. Yet, people very often are not able to forgive, or they don't have the ability or lack the ability to forgive. Why? Number one, what we call attribution error. What is attribution error? When people overemphasize internal factors to explain the behavior of others, but overemphasize, do the reverse when they're explaining their own behavior. Simple understanding. My friend does not pass the exam. When my friend does not pass the exam and you ask me if I have an attribution error, you ask me why he failed, I will say because he did not study hard enough. I will say because he is lazy. I will say because he is not interested, he is not motivated. I will ignore. What am I focusing on? I am focusing on internal factors. But I am ignoring the surroundings. I will not pay attention to the fact that just a week before the examination, one of his family members was critically unwell. I will not pay attention to the fact that on the day of the examination, early in the morning, he had developed a fever and so on. But when the reverse happens, if I don't clear the exam, if you ask me why, I will not take the blame upon myself. I will blame everyone else. My roommate is very useless. He wastes a lot of my time. He keeps disturbing me. The exam hall was not good. The exam hall was very far away. I was worried about something or the other. That is called attribution error. Where I have a tendency to fix fault or to place the blame on someone else, my tendency to forgive will also decline in equal measure. Number two, people are unwilling to forgive because of, in today's society, rising prejudices, rising intolerance, rising stereotypes and so on. And number three, because we now have the tendency to use anger, resentment as a defense mechanism, sometimes even as a conflict resolution mechanism. Where we have these concerns, three recommendations that you give. Number one, view forgiveness. Again, Gandhi's statement, view forgiveness as a mark of strength and confidence, not as a sign of weakness. If I forgive you, it does not mean that I'm weak. It means that I have the strength. He said that forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. The weak can never forgive. And why? Because revenge will destroy both, but forgiveness will elevate both parties. Second, if you find it difficult to forgive, second, keep in mind also the relationship value. What is it, relationship value? If your friend has done something wrong to you, understand, and you know that he has definitely done something wrong, understand what is more important, this feeling of resentment towards him or that relationship that you share with him. At this point in time, make a simple trade-off. What are the benefits of reconciliation, of forgiveness, as compared to the cost of escalating or at least continuing with the conflict? This should enable you to put an end to the conflict and be willing to forgive the other person. And number three, keep in mind Kant's categorical imperative. If someone has wronged me and I don't want to forgive him, understand that none of us is perfect. Tomorrow, if I do something wrong, would I expect others to forgive me or to carry that resentment, carry that grudge for a long time? And what examples can you give over here? The most famous example for forgiveness, genuine forgiveness, is Jesus Christ. When Christ was being crucified, he was on a very heavy wooden cross, his arms and his legs nailed to the cross. The first of his sayings was, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do." In that excruciating pain, he still was able to forgive him. Why? And that's why we say that is possibly the epitome of being humane. Second, from Hindu mythology, Ram forgiving Kaikeyi, his stepmother, for sending him into exile. Third, in India, or with India, I'll just go to the contrary in a minute. After the 1971 war, India releasing 93,000 captured Pakistani POWs instead of using them as a leverage. Why again? Because we believe that these feelings of resentment, anger, negativity would not yield us much. But in India these days, we see very often, and disappointingly, the exact opposite. Why? Very often it has been reported that when a patient goes to a hospital, if the treatment is not successful, if the patient dies or if the patient's health does not improve, there's a growing incident of the patient's relatives, family members attacking the doctors. For what? Nobody knows. A doctor may be very good at his work, may try his level best, but at the end of the day, the result, the efficacy of the treatment cannot be guaranteed. And at that point in time, seeking retaliation, seeking revenge, seeking retribution is certainly not correct. Which is why, first again, the value, concern, recommendation, evidence. Small quotation over here. How should you forgive? Nobody forgives with more grace, with more love than a child. And one final value that you could use over here, or one final, I would not say value, but rather concept, which is emotional intelligence. What is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize your emotions as well as the emotions of others, to be able to understand them, and use this understanding, use this information to guide your thoughts as well as your behavior. Why is emotional intelligence? If you take a look at Daniel Goleman, he'll say that, if you consider Daniel Goleman, he will say that 80% of human success in almost any walk of life, any field, can be attributed to emotional quotient, emotional intelligence. 20% of it would be attributed to IQ. Despite knowing that EQ is extremely important, what are the concerns that we face? Why is emotional quotient declining? Number one, because of self-discrepancy. What is self-discrepancy? That many people have a conflicting view, or within themselves have conflicting beliefs about oneself. How I want to project myself as compared to how I perceive myself to be. There's a conflict between the two, and of course this will have a negative effect on my well-being. Number two, because of a lack of social awareness, where I do not understand in entirety or holistically the world or the society around me, my own environment. And number three, because of an inability to manage stress. If everything, we see this during interviews, sensible, good, smart students are unable to manage stress. How do we create stress? We don't do anything. You repeat the same question, or you repeat the answer to a question, immediately the levels of stress start rising and they are unable to answer. Where there's declining emotional intelligence or a lack of it, in this case, what recommendation can we give? Number one, better self-awareness, introspection, reflection, which is the first value. Second, better observation and paying attention to others. Number three, recognizing different emotions that you yourself experience and learning to challenge them, learning to channel them positively. Whose examples can you give over here? One fundamental example, and perhaps that is why he's remembered after so long also, is Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, in the US, slavery was a significant bone of contention, was a very contentious issue. The Emancipation Proclamation was issued in July 1862 but came into force on 1st January 1863. Through the Emancipation Proclamation, all that Abraham Lincoln did, he knew that in states in the South, in the southern states, and of course the civil war was raging that time, he knew that these states should be persuaded, should be incentivized to come back to the Union to end the war as peacefully, as quickly as possible. The Emancipation Proclamation stated that if these states were willing to come back, their rights to keep slaves as a legal right would be maintained. What does this do? This enables him to successfully and quickly, peacefully conclude the war. Abraham Lincoln, as president, on a personal level, did not agree with slavery. He believed that it was inhuman. He believed it should be abolished. But as president, he also knew that he was bound by the law of the land, and legally, slavery was permissible. Now, if you want, in classroom, students give problems. They talk about something and they say, what is the immediate solution? You must understand there are many problems for which immediate solutions are not possible. What did he do? He gave them, the rebel states, a chance of almost 6 months to end the war if they wanted to retain their benefits. Number two, he also ensured that the personal conviction that he had that slavery should be abolished was now given more support, because once they came into the Union fold, it became relatively easier to guide them on the desired path. And number three, he paved the way for the abolition of slavery and providing suffrage, voting rights to the blacks. What is this today? High emotional intelligence. In recent times, one lady who's earned global praise for her handling of the COVID pandemic is the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern. How did she cultivate this kind of emotional intelligence? She did it again. What were we talking about? We were talking about self-awareness, better observation, paying attention to others, and that's precisely what she did. Throughout the pandemic, what she did was regular interactions with the people, listening to others' point of view, not only imposing her point of view on others, but genuinely considering suggestions that were being given by others, trying to empathize with people, and so on. Another example, I'm not sure if you've heard of this person or not, is this person, and he deserves some attention again, is this person called Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian Jew who was imprisoned in a Nazi concentration camp and survived the Holocaust. While he was there, in fact, right before he went there, he had started working on a manuscript which would later become a book called Man's Search for Meaning. Now, if you're sent into a concentration camp, it is but natural that given the pathetic and the extremely difficult situations there, physically and mentally, a person would break down. Frankl chose not to do that. He did the exact opposite. He saw this as a very good opportunity to understand why some people in concentration camps survived while others succumbed very quickly. And he realized that the difference between the two was a sense of purpose. Those who had a sense of purpose, something to drive them, something to motivate them, something to look forward to, were more likely to survive than the others. Frankl made the observation that every year, 1941, 42, 43, every year when Christmas and New Year's came, the number of people who died, no change in their living circumstances, no additional torture, no lesser food being given to them and so on, everything else remained the same. The number of deaths during that holiday season around New Year's would increase. And he realized that they were doing this because every year people would believe that by the time Christmas came or New Year's came, the Second World War would come to an end. And as December started coming to an end, and when they realized that the war was not ending, more than physically, mentally, they started giving up. It was these observations that not only enabled him to live, but also and survive that Holocaust, but also resulted in the completion of his seminal work again, Man's Search for Meaning. What does this display? High emotional intelligence again. And what does this enable you to do? To become more humane in the manner in which you deal with yourself, with people around you, with your environment. For reflective essays, the pattern will remain the same. The only thing, before I go further from here, let me briefly recap this for you. For reflective essays, what are you doing? You keeping in mind for reflective essays, you're keeping in mind they are not fact heavy. They have a value-based orientation. To explain those values, appropriate examples are important. You will be rewarded for having an optimistic, and I hope you can relate to this better now. You will be rewarded for an optimistic and a virtuous bent of mind, and the knowledge, whether it is terms, whether it is concepts, whether it is examples from the ethics paper, will be very beneficial in writing these kind of essays. Second, when you're writing these essays, in every essay, the one distinction that you make In addition to understanding the key terms, identify the values that are relevant for the topic. There are many values that you're taught in the ethics paper. If you make a list of even 10 or 15 of them and prepare them the way that you're looking at it, what is the concern, what are the problems that you're facing, second, what recommendation you can give, and third, what examples can be quoted, your content will be of a reasonable quality and a reasonable standard. And keep in mind that when you're preparing a value for any one topic, the same value can be used across topics also, as long as your understanding of that value is correct. Now, that's the first part. Second part, now we've looked at one essay topic over here. Now, if I say I use self-awareness introspection for the first essay topic, life is a long journey between being human and or between human being and being humane. The same self-awareness is also important in another essay topic, that ships don't sink because of the water around them, they sink because of the water that gets into them. The value will be the same, the usage will vary slightly. And to understand how it varies slightly, let me show you how you do that also. Let me briefly take you over there. Now, one essay topic that we looked at right now, life is a long journey between being human and being humane. Now, here we said key concern, being born human is not enough. You need to make a conscious effort to be more compassionate, caring, etc. First value that we chose was self-conditioning, poor education, herd mentality, and so on. Recommendation that you gave, better child rearing practices, better socialization, role models. And three examples that we quoted there: the Japanese education system, a culture of charity which is often missing in our country, and the example of Azim Premji. Now, if I change the essay topic, let me take another topic over here. Ships don't sink because of the water around them, they sink because of the water that gets into them. First, what does this mean? This means that everyone has problems, everyone faces challenges. What matters is not the problems around us. What matters is the extent to which we allow these problems to affect us, to what extent we allow them to impact us, and how we choose to respond to them. Everyone has problems. How you deal with them is what will make the difference between whether you sink or whether you stay afloat. For that, the first value that is important is self-awareness. Now, self-awareness we used here. The same value we will use, but we will change the usage slightly. Now, self-awareness means, or in this case, what is the concern? In the second topic, self-awareness now implies that you should not get bogged down, you should not get overwhelmed, you should not get scared, intimidated by the problems around you. What is the concern that we face? That number one, there's a pessimism bias. What is pessimism bias? That people often have a tendency to overemphasize the probability of negative things happening to them. Even if it is a small problem, they exaggerate the problem, because of which invariably they're not able to deal with it well. Second, self-pity and inaction. I have a lot of problems, I don't have adequate money, I don't have time to prepare, so on and so forth. We have students who are coming to Delhi. They come from different cities, they have a lot of money to spend on themselves, they spend a lot of money on attending classes, they are more fortunate than lakhs of other people who cannot afford these kind of facilities. And yet, what is the problem? That, sir, I have to attend 2 classes in a day, plus I also have to read the newspaper. And when they believe, and they're allowing these problems to enter inside, and now they start believing that I will not be able to achieve anything. What is this called? Self-pity, and consequently inaction. And third, a lack of self-belief that you can overcome these problems successfully. Where people face these problems, what recommendation will you give? Number one, positivity. What is positivity effect? Positivity effect means that even if you are analyzing a situation in which you have unfortunately had to deal with failure, analyze it in a manner that it gives you insights for future success. You tried to clear the civil services exam, passed the prelims, failed in the mains. Next year, instead of looking at the negative, the other problems that you're facing, the possibility of job loss, the opportunity cost, and so on, don't bother about that. Focus on the positivity effect. Develop insights into what went wrong this time and how it can be overcome the next time. Second, inculcate. What we discussed in one of the examples earlier also, inculcate gratitude. No matter what your problems are, there are many people around who are facing even worse problems but are not succumbing to them. For example, how do you inculcate gratitude? A visit to an orphanage, a visit to a hospital. There's a statement which says that I always complained that I didn't have new shoes till I saw the man who had no feet. What are you doing? A relative comparison that don't keep bothering or don't keep worrying about the problems that you have. Get up and take action to solve those problems. Third, develop confidence by achieving small targets. And what examples can you give over here? Students say that, sir, I can't clear the exam, I can't do this, I can't do that. Remember the example of this lady called Helen Keller. By the age of 18 months, Helen Keller, by the age of 18 months, she had lost her hearing and she had lost her sight. Despite being deaf and blind at 18 months, she ended up writing 14 books. She was able to win the US Presidential Medal of Freedom and is one of the most famous people in the world known for being a disability activist. If she could do it, why can't someone else? Similarly, again, the example, and this example I think is one of my favorites of all time, the Sri Lankan cricketer Marwan Attapattu. Students don't clear 1 or 2 exams, they completely give up. That, sir, life has come to an end, I don't know what I'll do, I'm feeling very bad, so on and so forth. Look at Marwan Attapattu. Marwan Attapattu took 6 years to score his second run in Test cricket. What does this mean? The first time, and his story is really worth reading, the first opportunity that he was given to play for Sri Lanka, Marwan Attapattu in his Test debut made 0 and 0. He was removed from the team. Second time that he was called back, this opportunity came after a period of 17 months. Second time that he was called to play, he made 0 and 1. Not a good score. He was removed again. Third opportunity that he was given came after another 21 months. This time his score 0 and 0. And this is for the Sri Lankan national team, his entire career. Went back, played first class cricket, practiced. Fourth opportunity that he was given, this time he finally started making runs. Of course, he must have made 1 run and gone on from there. He ended up with a career where he scored more than 6,000 runs. He has got 16 Test centuries and 6 double centuries in Test cricket to his credit. And if you start off with this kind of a level, 0, 0, 0, 1, the gap between this and this is a gap of 6 years. That is Marwan Attapattu. What does this mean? That despite the problems and the terrible problems he was facing and the stress it must have created, he was able to focus more on the solution rather than worry only about the problem. And of course, the example of Arunima Sinha, Indian and the world's first female amputee to climb Mount Everest in 2013. Ships don't sink because of the water around them, they sink because of the water that gets into them. Prepare one value properly, no matter how the topic changes, you will always have good quality content to write. For those of you who are not able to, develop that understanding from here, let me take one more example. A value that we looked at or a concept that we looked at in the first essay was emotional intelligence. Life is a journey between being human and being humane, emotional intelligence. And for emotional intelligence, we said there are 3 concerns: self-discrepancy, lack of social awareness, and the inability to manage stress. 3 recommendations we gave: self-awareness and introspection, better observation, recognizing emotions and channelizing them positively. 3 examples: Abraham Lincoln, Jacinda Ardern, and Viktor Frankl. Now, the same emotional intelligence also becomes important and also is used in another essay. This essay topic, a mindful manifesto is the catalyst to a tranquil self. First, what does this mean? This means that having a conscious notion of yourself and what you want to achieve, what you want to do, is vital for attaining inner peace. In other words, knowing others is intelligence, but knowing yourself is true wisdom, is true power also. Now, if I want to know myself, if I want that mindful manifesto where I'm certain about what is happening around me and how I am going to proceed, I need emotional intelligence. Problem is, now here in the last, in fact, I'll have to show you that also for a moment. If you look at self-awareness and these 2 topics we're discussing, the value was the same, but the usage changed slightly. In this topic that we're looking at now, these 2, the value is the same and to a large extent, even the usage remains common. For example, even here, the problem that we face is self-discrepancy, a difference between what we perceive ourselves to be as compared to how we want to be perceived or how we would want to be seen. Second, why do we not have a mindful manifesto? Lack of social and self-awareness. I neither understand myself well, nor do I understand happenings around me. And number three, belief perseverance. What is belief perseverance? Or this actually, slightly better term to use over here would be a perseverance bias. What is perseverance bias? That as circumstances change, as situations change, as beliefs change, I am not willing to inculcate those changed parameters, those changed beliefs, those changed circumstances into my decision making or into my understanding of the world around me. I persist with the same beliefs. Where I have these problems, what recommendations can you give? First, again taking directly from there itself, first recommendation, self-awareness, introspection, reflection. Number two, paying attention to what is occurring in the present. Number three, this is not curious, it should be curious. Having a curious, having a kind and having a non-judgmental attitude. And number four, realistic goal setting. Now, where you're not able to understand the theory, keep in mind the example, Viktor Frankl, we've already talked about, Marwan Attapattu, I'm repeating here again, keep in mind MS Dhoni. Mindful manifesto, awareness of yourself and of your environment is very important for having tranquility, for attaining peace. And here, the most common nickname given to MS Dhoni was Captain Cool. That no matter how demanding the match, no matter how difficult circumstances got, he was always self-assured, he was always confident, he was always composed. Why? Because he was very clear about the path that he was taking, about the circumstances and how he would deal with them. Similarly, another example you can give here is a lady called J.K. Rowling. If I remember correctly, I think her current worth is roughly around 800 million pounds. And when she started writing, the author of the Harry Potter books, when she started writing, she was a single mother. She was on aid from the British government. She had a child to take care of and was suffering rejection after rejection from one publishing house or the other. And from there, but again, mindful manifesto, she was absolutely clear of the path she was taking, where she was, where she wanted to go, and how the journey would proceed. You can take the example of Bill Gates, a high school dropout, and for a very long period of time, the richest man in the world, literally revolutionizing the way the world lives and functions today. You can take the example of a person called Steve Jobs, never losing that confidence, always maintaining that mindfulness. He was evicted from the company he himself had founded and yet went on to become, I would say without doubt, one of the leading innovators of our times. And again, what is the concept or the value that we're looking at over here? Emotional intelligence. Which is why, and this is again just a couple of topics that we've discussed here. For reflective essays, again, this is why I'm saying students develop a mental block. They believe that they cannot do these essays well because they don't have the kind of ready-made content that we have in topics related to polity or economics or social issues and so on. Reflective essays are very easy to write. Borrow information here from the ethics paper. Prepare some values, and the values themselves can be used interchangeably across essay topics once you've understood and prepared it well. Identify the value, briefly describe it. Second, identify the concerns we are facing. Third, give some recommendations to overcome those concerns, and substantiate your writing by giving sensible, relevant examples. This is where we conclude the discussion for the essay paper that was conducted this year. Again, based on the discussion that we've had, my sincere advice would be, please try to write some essays, practice some essay writing in again 1000 to 1200 words to understand how you are proceeding and where you may need improvement. Thank you very much.